Hello everyone, my name is Nakisha Alaya and my metric number is 303237. Today our group is going to talk about the Iran's military strategy in the 2026 conflict. The 2026 conflict between Iran and the US is a war defensive case study on how states use asymmetric defensive tactics to counter conventional military superiority. It is viewed through the lens of defensive realism because Iran's strategy was fundamentally using low-cost missiles, drones, and strategic geography to offset its military disadvantages. Therefore, seeing this case study is very useful to look how a state provide their military approach and how they can survive and their security concern came into play. The immediate attack erupted on the 28th February 2026 when a US-Israel alliance launched a surprise strike on Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure, killing the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Hello, my name is Alfat Aziz Kurnia. My metric number is 303194. Today I will explain the theoretical framework used in this research. First, this study adopts neorealism, a theory in international relations developed by Kenneth Waltz. Neorealism argues that the international system is anarchic, meaning there is no central authority above states. As a result, every state must rely on itself to ensure its own security and survival. Neorealism also assumes that power is distributed unequally among states. Some countries possess greater military, economic, or diplomatic capabilities than the others. Because of this imbalance, states continuously adapt their strategies to survive in the international system. Second, this research focuses specifically on defensive realism, which is a branch of neorealism. Unlike offensive realism, where states seek to maximize power and pursue hegemony, defensive realism argues that states primarily seek security rather than expansion. They adopt moderate and defensive policies to avoid unnecessary conflicts while protecting their national survival. This perspective is highly relevant to Iran military actions in 2026. From the lens of defensive realism, Iran's decisions can be understood as efforts to maximize its security and ensure its survival within an anarchic international environment. Finally, this study examines Iran's asymmetrical warfare strategy. Asymmetric warfare refers to military strategies used by a weaker actor against a much stronger opponent. Instead of matching conventional military power directly, the weaker side employs unconventional tactics to reduce the enemy's advantage while preserving its own capabilities. In Iran's case, asymmetrical warfare allowed the country to compensate for its relatively weaker conventional military capabilities by using strategies that increase its resilience and impose costs on a stronger adversary. Therefore, defensive realism provides a useful framework to explain why Iran adopts this military strategy as a means of ensuring its national security and survival. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Naisla Kaneswardi. My metric number is 302981. And for this part of the report, my part is the strategic analysis. Now, as we all know, the US-Iran war can be seen as an asymmetrical warfare. How so? Now, I want to debunk a little bit on the strategic maritime denial. So, we have insurance-driven shipping blockades. Iran, instead of conventional naval confrontation, the IRGC utilized localized drone strikes to trigger massive commercial insurance risk withdrawals, thus successfully shutting down transit corridors. And not only that, Iran have what we call the VHF coercion and electronic warfare. It is a systemic GPS spoofing disrupted regional maritime domain awareness or the MDA, while direct FHF radio threats directly coerce merchant vessels masters to avoid the designated coalition zones. So, in this day and age of globalization, Iran really specializes how electronic warfare and insurance driven shipping blockades can be seen as a way of war and a way of coercion. Hence why the asymmetrical aspects of Iran's strategy can be seen as a maritime denial. All right, now this brings us to the broader doctrinal pivot which shifts the conflict from a localized military clash to a war of global supply chains, a concept defined as connectivity as coercion. In modern conflict, trade routes, choke points, and energy corridors are actively weaponized. However, this coercion was highly selective. While Western aligned shipping faced severe disruption, an intricate economic workaround emerged to protect specific partners. Now we observe the heavy utilization of shadow fleets and I quote, shadow fleets on flags of convenient tankers operating under alternative insurance networks to keep specific oil and commodities corridors flowing. Now, essentially, geography and infrastructure were manipulated to project power, imposing massive economic penalties on adversaries while maintaining vital economic liveliness for allies. Okay, finally, now let us examine the outcome and its theoretical alignment. What we see here is a profound geopolitical stalemate. Despite the deployment of highly sophisticated international naval coalitions, conventional military power face severe limits in completely neutralizing decentralized asymmetrical threats. This entire dynamic serves as some kind of a textbook case of a defensive realism. The actions taken by the regional actors were fundamentally driven by systematic insecurity and the pursuit of deterrence, rather than seeking aggressive expansion or global hegemony. Their strategic posture was calculated to maximize security, exploit the vulnerabilities of a globalized economy, and create a defensive buffer against superior conventional forces, or as the academic world call it, the buffer zone. So, in conclusion, this theater demonstrates that in contemporary international relations, asymmetric tactical innovation can successfully counter traditional state power, turning global connectivity into the ultimate battleground. Thank you.
Hello and assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Roshan Fikri and my metric number is 303200. I'm going to present about the critical evaluation and critical discussion of the Iranian military strategy of 2026. So first of all is the effectiveness of Iran's asymmetric strategy. First, by looking at its effectiveness of Iran's asymmetric strategy, although Iran suffered significant military loss, including the death of senior leaders and the destruction of many military assets, its primary objective was not to win the war, but conventionally, but to ensure the survival of the regime. By relying on missiles, drones, and decentralized command structure instead of direct conventional warfare, Iran remained operational throughout the conflict. This shows that the resilience and political endurance were more important than military superiority, making the strategy successful in preserving the regime despite the heavy cost. Second, 4.2, is maritime coercion and choke point leverage. The second point is Iran's use of maritime coercion through the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The move disrupts one of the world's most important oil shipping routes, causing a global oil price to increase sharply and creating a pressure on the international community. However, while the closure gave Iran a temporary bargaining power, it also provoked the stronger military uh, and diplomatic response from the coalition. As a result, the strategy produced a short-term leverage, but also increased the risk of the and cost of the Iran. Third is proxy network reach versus control. The third point focuses on Iran's proxy network. Iran relied on the groups such as the Hezbollah, the Houthis, and also the Iraqi militias to attack the coalition interests from multiple fronts without directly deploying its own military. This expanded Iran's regional influence and forced the coalition to spread its resource across different threats. However, these proxy groups also become more independent, making them harder for Iran to coordinate. This reduced the Tehran's control over the conflict and increased the risk of unintended escalation. Fourth, the coalition cohesion and strategic limits. Although the United States and Israel worked together as a coalition, they did not always share the same political and military priorities. Differences emerged over military uh, operation and peace negotiation, while partners like the United Kingdom limited their involvement to defensive support. These disagreements weakened the coalition cohesion and demonstrated that even close allies often pursue their own national interests rather than completely following a common strategy. And finally, negotiation and asymmetric stalemate. The conflict ended in a negotiated settlement rather than a decisive military victory. Both Iran and the coalition faced a rising economic and military costs, making continued fighting increasingly unsustainable. Although a ceasefire and the Islamabad memorandum brought to an end of it to active hostilities, major issues such as Iran's nuclear program and international sanctions remain unsolved. This outcome reflects the nature of the asymmetric warfare, where prolonged conflict uh, often end up in a strategic stalemate instead of clear winner.
To conclude the 2026 war between Iran, US, and Israel, it is a classic example of how asymmetric warfare is very vital for modern strategic analysis. In spite of the huge blow it has cost the leadership in Iran maintain its regime survival through prompt political replacement, institutional survival, domestic and proxy force. This demonstrates that military dominance can be insufficient for political goals like regime change when a target state it has a higher tolerance for cost. There are three key recommendations that can be made from this case study. First, that we must not rely heavily on leadership decapitation for regime change, because the survival of the Iranian regime proved that the strength of institutions, ideology over individual leaders. Future planning must include wider political, social, institutional evaluations. Second is that we must enhance diplomatic channels and regional crisis management, because increasing cooperation and multilateral security arrangement can protect the sensitive regions such as the Strait of Hormuz. The third is the states must strengthen their defense against the asymmetric threats. because low-cost drones and ballistic missiles can threaten the technology advanced opponents, critical infrastructure, and shipping lanes. Military planners must build a flexible through improved air, missiles, or defensive alongside joint intelligence sharing.